Hi. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Linda. Hi, Elise. Hi, you guys. How are you guys doing?
I don't have water.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any water.
You don't have any water?
No, haven't had any water for 4 days.
Oh, God.
Frozen pipes.
You don't have any
Frozen
water?
well.
You don't have any water in your home?
No, frozen
Oh.
well.
All through a well? That's how you drink?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it gets pumped in,
Yeah.
and the well's frozen, so we have to wait till it thaws out.
Oh, I see. Wow. Do you have any bottled water?
Yeah,
Okay.
we stockpile it just for
Mhm.
this reason.
Yeah.
Gotta go
Linda,
to the neighbors. After this Zoom, gonna go to the neighbors to take a shower.
to take. Uh-huh. Okay. How you doing, Linda?
It's even cold in Florida.
Is it really? Right, I see you're dressed with layers. Wow. Wow, yeah. How cold is it in Florida?
It's in the 40s.
In the 40s.
Yeah, we're in the center of this, in the middle, like in Sarasota. So
I see.
there's colder up north in the state and warmer down south.
I see. Wow. Yeah. I haven't really reached out to friends in the East Coast, but sounds like it's super extreme.
Yeah, this front was really something else.
Yeah. Where are you, Brenda?
And by Corpus Christi, South Texas.
South Texas.
But right now we're at 32.
32. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Hi, Yen.
How is it in Israel right now?
It's
Hi, Sabina.
pouring.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey, Ellie. It's pouring.
Oh,
It's pouring, but not too cold, but it's like there was lightning and, not thunder, but lightning,
I spoke
like
to,
really, really pouring. How about you in New York? Yeah.
I was freezing, but I spoke to Ema the other day. She said it was like summer. in
Right.
Israel.
She's in
So,
Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But it was
Yeah,
raining
she
in
said it
Tel
was,
Aviv, so they said today.
she said it was gonna rain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
How cold is it in New York?
it's like the teens.
In the
It's like,
teens.
it feels like below. I mean, and we had wind and rain. I mean, and we had heavy rain and wind. And Thursday night I was gonna go to a rehearsal at a Hanukkah party, but it was I didn't know how bad it was gonna be, so I just zoomed it.
You zoomed it, yeah.
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 Zoomed it and played
Yeah.
along with the singing and stuff. That was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good that Zoom exists, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So we just lit here, and the candles, we were by the candles for a couple of hours, and they just really about, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, the last light went out. It was a, very, very beautiful, powerful night. And I hope
You have a picture?
I did take a picture when they were all, lit. I
Yeah.
can send it to you guys. But,
Okay.
but my husband took a picture of the last one, when the last light was going out, and there's a beautiful saying in Breslov that says that, Pesach or any Chag, but it's actually in relation to Hanukkah, that when Hanukkah ends, which we still hasn't ended, we have, for you guys, you still have the day to light and everything, but
Right.
but it says Hanukkah doesn't end, Hanukkah nichnas. Hanukkah doesn't leave, but Hanukkah enters, right? So any Chag, any moment of every Chag, every holiday brings a different light to it. And those lights don't end when the Chag is ending, but they actually integrate, right? They're not external anymore, but they're internal. So I really like that idea as we are
Beautiful, I like that.
in the last,
Yeah.
Zot Chanukah, in the last night of Chanukah.
So fun.
Now all the lights that were out, they're inside. They're coming in. I'm really excited about learning with you about the dreidel. My husband just put the dreidel here in the table, So I'm gonna spin it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful Torah that I feel like it's a continuation of the learning that we have been doing about ups and downs in life. And that I'll get to, more specifically when we talk about suffering and simcha and joy in the next couple of weeks. But I wanted to take the concept of that we discussed a couple of weeks ago, and then I think we continued a little bit with the ups and downs of the story of Hanukkah last week, of how do we go from level to level. That Torah of Naaseh v'Nishma, we will hear and we will do, or we will do and we'll understand. And I want to start with that today, with the very last section that we never really got to enter really in depth. And I want to start from there to talk about the dreidel and the significance of the dreidel, this kind of like toy. But how Rebbe Nachman takes this idea of the spinning of the dreidel in an incredible, super helpful concept that I think is necessary, and it repeats itself not only on Hanukkah but throughout all our holidays, but specifically when it comes to Hanukkah. So we'll get to that, but let's just kind of like settle in as we usually do. And bring in intention of, bringing in the light of these like past 7 nights, 8 nights of Hanukkah into our mundane experiences of everyday life. So let's take a minute to kind of like settle in and focus into an attention of the moment before we start our learning. when you're ready to come back into the present moment, the surroundings of the present moment. Slowly open your eyes and join us. So one of the elements that I wanted to bring to you guys as we engage on an initial level with the Torah of Rebbe Nachman is this concept of itchadshut. And itchadshut is from the word chadash. And chadash means new in Hebrew. And it's a concept that is also very central to Rebbe Nachman. And he usually talks about it, which we're actually, I don't think we're going to get to that lesson, let's say. But Rebbe Nachman teaches that it's forbidden to be old. Which I love, like it's forbidden to be old. He says, not an old chassid, not an old, like he goes through a list of things, like it's forbidden to be old. And obviously he doesn't mean it's forbidden to grow old and to come, thank God, to old age, but it's forbidden to see ourselves with oldness, with a sense of being the same, with a sense of no change, with a sense of no development, with a sense of this is who I am and this is how I do things. But he really, really, really teaches that a person should always see themselves as young, as waking up for the first time, the kind of beginner's mind type of attitude towards life. And it's wonderful, wonderful teachings that are related to asur liot zaken. That's how it's said in Hebrew. It's forbidden to be old. And we're gonna kind of like on the side walk around that concept of asur liot zaken, forbidden to be old, but from a very, very different perspective that is very much related to Chanukah and related to the Dreidel. So I'm assuming everybody has the sources. And I'm gonna open the source. Here we go. Now, why don't I see anybody? Hold on. Did you guys lose me? No. Hold on. I just didn't see. Ugh, this is the most annoying thing ever. This iPad sometimes. Why can't I see my text and some of you at the same time? I'm gonna ask one of you to speak so that I see if I can see any of you when you're speaking. Because for some reason I don't see anybody. I see like just the icon. Can anybody speak up and say hello?
Hi,
Hi.
it's technical
Hello.
difficulties, huh?
Hello.
Uh-huh. Here we go. Okay, yeah. So it's good.
Right.
I'm all good. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I want to start with the text. The first text that you have is from a couple of weeks ago. Is the last text that I've been wanting really to zoom in and zone in and pay attention to, because I think it's somebody the other night we went to Light with friends, and our friend Ruti Yair Newsbound said, Breslov is a teaching on like how to fall, how to get up, and how to keep on going. And I really I've been thinking about that since she said it. It's like there's a way in which fundamentally Breslov is teaching you how to fall, how to get up, and how to keep on going. So having said that, I wanted to read with you again this last text from Likutei Moharan as an opening to talking about Chanukah and the Dreidel and this aspect of itchadshut, which is renewal. So he goes like that, and I'm just gonna read it in English. However, when one wants to emerge from this level of we will do and we will hear to a higher level of we will do and we will hear. We talked about, right, going from level to level. There must be a fall prior to the ascent. It's like it's a given that in order to go from one level to the next, a fall has to happen in the midst, as if to say there's no way to grow without falling, and also that there's a purpose, an ultimate purpose to the falling, and this is because the ultimate purpose of the fall is the ascent, which will follow, right? So from this teaching in Likutei Moharan, Rabbi Nachman is already telling us incredible fundamentals about how to fall, how to get up, and how to move on, right? Like he's saying, in order to grow, you must fall. And he's saying that fall is not just there without a purpose, but there is a purpose in every fall. And the fall is that it would be followed by an ascent. I think we will relate to that again when we talk about suffering and we talk about simcha. But it's a very, very, very fundamental teaching in Breslov that the purpose of every fall is the ascent that follows it. Ki hayerida hi tachlit ha'aliyah. Right, in Hebrew, ki yerida hi tachlit ha'aliyah. The purpose of the fall is the ascent. So last week we talked about this movement of, flying up and down, that movement of going up and down and existing in both dimensions at the same time, and the capacity to really live both in this place of recognition of the, higher sense of self, and then having to come back to a lower sense of self, and this kind of like disquieting experience that the host was experiencing, but at the same time, the reality that we live in both dimensions at the same time. And today I'm going back to that kind of idea, the up and down that exists a lot on Hanukkah. And we're going to be addressing this issue. I like a lot the sources that we're going to bring, that I brought for you guys today. And we're going to kind of start with an incredible discussion in the Gemara, in the Talmud, that talks about, or that recognizes the fact that there are like two dimensions in this world. There's the dimension of God, and then there's the dimension of us. And what happens, and what, are those two dimensions exclusive of each other? Do we, does God live above and we live here? Or is there any connection between the two, and what are the limits of that connection? And this Gemara is going to be struggling with this idea of like, where is the dimension of God and what is the dimension of man, and how are they at all able to connect to each other? So it says like this. Rabbi Yossi says, the divine presence never actually, and the words in bold are the actual words of the Gemara, of the Talmud, and the words that are not in bold are like trying to help us fill in the grammar so that we understand exactly what the Gemara is trying to say. So the divine presence never actually descended below, and Moses and Elijah never actually ascended to heaven on high, as it is stated, and it's bringing a source from the Psalms that says the heavens are the heavens of the Lord, and the earth he gave to the children of man. Right? So a position that says, yes, this is the world that we live in. The world that we live in is the world of man. And the world of man is down here. And the heavens are the heavens of God, and God lives there in the heavens. And then there's these two, this very dual reality where like we have two different orders, the order of God above and the order of man below. And God gave us, the rulership over this realm, over this dimension, and they're distinct domains, right? Indicating that these are two distinct domains And now we're going to see what does that mean. So then the Gemara continues the discussion and says like this. The Gemara asks, is going to have a question like, what do you mean? Like we're just separate realities that they don't interact in any way. So the Gemara asks, so I'm in number 3 now. Indeed, the divine presence never descended below. Okay, so let me just go back and give you the thing that I thought I was going to skip, but I couldn't. So going back to 2. So the heavens are the heavens of the Lord, and the earth he gave to the children of man. What does that mean? What is this referring to? Indicating that these are 2 distinct domains. Apparently, from 10 handbreadths upward is considered a separate domain. So it's this is relating to is the fact that there is like a handbreadth is like 10 handbreadths is about, I don't know, it's like, you know how in the Gemara we don't have measurements that are in centimeters or in meters or in yards. It's all related to, you know, so yeah, parts of the body. So 10 handbreadths is about the distance between the floor and the hip of a human being. That's about the distance. This is saying is like God never descended below 10 handbreadths, and we never ascended, you know, above. I think it's also saying 10 handbreadths. So now the Gemara is going to ask, but what do you mean? And did the divine presence never descended below 10 handbreadths? Did the divine presence never come below that domain? Never, you know, came down? Isn't it written that God descended onto Mount Sinai? Doesn't the Torah use the word or the language of descent into this world to say that God came down to Mount Sinai, as if to say, no, what do you mean? God did descend into this realm of 10 handbreadths below. And the Gemara answers, although God descended below, he always reminded 10 handbreadths above the ground. Even though God came down, he never came down all the way down below 10 handbreadths. Since from 10 handbreadths and above, it is a separate domain. In fact, the divine presence never descended to the domain of this world. Right. So the discussion in the Gemara, in the Talmud, is talking about how low can the presence of God actually descend? How far down can we really say that there is divinity in this world? Does God really come down to the most greedy, to the most dirty, to the most mundane aspects of our reality? Or there is a place where God actually does not, where God does not actually go down into? Now, you know, we are used to talking about, you know, like children in kindergarten saying God is here, God is there, God is truly everywhere. So we have an aspect and an understanding that somehow, on the other hand, God is everywhere. But is God really? I think that what the Gemara is asking is God really, be'emet, in truth, everywhere? Can we find God in every situation? Can we find God in the most mundane? Can we find God in the most difficult? Can we find God in those very, 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 very low places? And the rabbis of the Gemara seem to be having a difficulty with that. He's saying, no, it's true that God descends to our level. It's true that God descends into the human realm, but there are limitations to that. It's not so simple to say maybe that God descends all the way down. It seems like, but then the Gemara comes and says, but what do you mean? Doesn't God actually come down? So we see already in the rabbi's attention of like, how far down does God descend? How much is God involved in our lives? To what kind of detail is God involved in our lives? Right, those are the fundamental questions. So with that in mind, I want to bring you now to a beautiful, again, as we did last week, which I thought it was beautiful, that we brought from the world of the law, of halacha, of Jewish law, to shed light into an inner understanding of Hanukkah. And we're going to do the same thing, the same thing today. So going now to the Shulchan Aruch.
Could I
Yes.
ask, just
Yes.
before we leave that part, I mean, I
Yes.
actually have a lot of questions, but I noticed that in what we read above, the heavens are the heavens of the Lord, and the earth he gave to the children of man. And because the Gemara is always asking questions, I haven't studied it, but I wish I knew, why to the children of man and not the earth he gave to man? Or humans, or whatever word, but this is specifically, and we know, I believe, a principle that they don't, if they say something twice, there's a reason. If they say to the children of man, it's meaningful. Every word has a meaning.
Yeah.
Am I
So it's
distracting
interesting
us from
because-
where you want to go? I don't want
No,
to
I think it's-
distract you
no, I
because
think it's totally great that you're asking. I think it's good to ask those like very specific questions. I will say that in Hebrew, it says "V'ha'aretz natan livnei adam." Ben
Bnei
Adam,
Adam, so the
Ibnei
children, the
the
sons,
children
yeah.
of man, right? But in Hebrew, human is Ben Adam, the child of man,
Oh, yes, I see.
or the child of Adam, right? Yes, Elise. So it could be that within your question, you're also pointing out to why is human or person a Ben Adam, a son of Adam, that already implying a certain genealogy or a certain sense of source. So I think there's a very deep question there of what is the fundamentally, existentially, maybe, the nature of man as a Ben Adam, a son of Adam.
So maybe Adam is not human, but the children of
Yes,
Adam.
it could be. It could be. I mean, there's what was Adam and who was Adam is such a mystery.
Cubic topic. Okay, that was helpful. Thanks. That was
Yeah.
definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Elise, you
Thank
want
you.
to just say something? Sure.
Yes, I mean, I was thinking last week, and I'm thinking again this week when we go over this, that especially with this aspect of Ben Adam, that when Adam and Eva were thrown out of Gan Eden, they had fallen down, and their children are going to do, which is the Ben Adam, but it's all of us will have to go up and ascend again.
Yes.
So they fell down so that we can go through the process of growing up and moving up the ladder. So what do
Yes.
you think of this? Because that's what I felt last week, and here again, I'm thinking about that.
You're thinking about restoring and going back to a state of pristine Adam.
Adam had to fall down and being
Adam had to fall
expelled.
down.
Adam Rishon, the first one, had to fall down, be expelled from Gan Eden, so that us, his children, will have to go and ascend again.
Yes.
And giving us this free will and this all the possibility for us to keep on growing.
Yeah, that's why in Hasidut and in Kabbalah, most paradigms of growth and fixing come from the paradigm of the fall of Adam.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow Adam's fall created the imprint, the initial imprint of what the world is going, like the operational model of the world. And the operational model of the world comes from a fall, as you say, and the restoration of that fall through
Yes,
going up the ladder.
Okay.
Yeah. Elaine, yeah.
I have never been Hasid, so I don't know what they teach. To me, when I hear about a fall of Adam, I think of St. Augustine. I think of, old Christianity, medieval Christianity, and everything being based on the fall and original sin. So maybe I'm finding this fascinating because I had no idea that Judaism required a fall before an ascent. I think of that as such a Christian idea.
Mhm. I think the difference, and I'm no expert.
And I don't want, I know that this is strange.
Christianity, but I think from what I know, and I'm like generalizing, and I don't want to misrepresent another tradition,
Right.
obviously, right? But what I understand in my super small understanding is that in Christianity, the concept of, I think, humanity comes with an inherent sin associated with humanity. Whereas in Judaism, but in Judaism, we don't come inherently in sin. We don't come inherently, even though we come with a fall, right? We come incomplete in a certain way. There's beautiful Torahs that talk about how God created the world, not in a state of perfection, but in a state of imperfection, that required men and, men's prayer in certain cases to fix or to in this very cliche type of saying, become partners with God in the process of creation, right? So that but that partnership between God and man, that in a certain way is fundamentally what tefillah is about, and what our mission is about, is the recognition of the relationship between God and man, is not seen in Judaism as inherently being faulty. Man is considered to be not born in sin in the way that in Christianity we are born within sin. A baby is born shalem, is born pure, is born, we believe that man in its essence is pure and is good, fully good. It's just that this life.
But we have to have a fall before we can climb.
Right, but we need to experience this world, and this world is fraught with opportunities for falling. Right,
Yes,
is inherently I think in the makeup of the world, that because of our engaging with the world, we're going to be encountering our own limitations, or encountering these places where we have something to grow and to learn. I mean,
so to Rebbe Nachman, our mission, if you like, is to climb up.
I think if I were to say it in two words, which is again doing a disservice to Rebbe Nachman and the incredible breadth of depth of Torah that Rebbe Nachman brings, I think if I were to dare to say, I would say it's like it's our recognition of the relationship between us and God. That is in and of itself a process of growth, because the process of recognizing God is something that is not just, oh, I recognize God, but like, oh, I recognize God here, and oh, I recognize God on a higher level, and then on a deeper level with no end, right? Because because God is infinite, right? So there's no end to how much we can comprehend and how much we can be in the presence of God. So I think for Rebbe Nachman, the ultimate purpose is for us to recognize the presence of God in our lives, and to deepen that understanding and fine tune it more and more and more and more, but more and more here, like that going up, but also more and more going down. And that's why I want to talk about the down today, right? Like, it's not just to become more spiritual and elevate ourselves, it's also to bring God more into this world, I often use the image of yoga, which is something that I do, and in Iyengar yoga, which is a practice that I've been doing for many, many years, it's always, the extension happens by
Rooting down.
pulling
I
down.
teach yoga.
Exactly, right? So you focus on your feet, or you focus where the weight is, either in your hand or in your
Right.
feet. And from that place, you extend, right? So it's a similar thing. So you not only but you elevate by bringing down, and the more you're able to feel the feet and the weight of your body on your feet, the more you're able to stretch up and open up and do all the amazing actions that you do in Iyengar yoga, right? So it's that, but it's also that, right? So we will talk about that dynamic.
Thank you. This is a wonderful discussion.
Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions before we move on into the next step? No? Okay. So the next text is number 4. And is really a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Like, so for me, so telling, so relevant this year. I was telling a friend of mine, like, I feel like this year, I feel like both the light and the darkness so strongly. It started, as I told you guys last week, I was in such a difficult place before Hanukkah started, and slowly recognizing both the light and dark of this Chag was, it's been an amazing, amazing experience. So what does the Shulchan Aruch say? What do the the rabbis that are writing the halacha, right? The way that we're supposed to act, it's very action-oriented halacha. One should place the Hanukkah light, the menorah, above 3 handbreadths from the ground, right? So ideally, the menorah should be low, under 10 tfachim, under the 10 handbreadths we're talking about, right? So we have to place the menorah under 3 handbreadths from the ground. It is a mitzvah to place it beneath 10 handbreadths, and it's referring to, this concept of like that the God or the Shekhinah or the divine presence doesn't come down below 10 handbreadths. But if it's placed above 10 handbreadths, he has fulfilled the obligation. So it's okay if you have to place it above. But ideally, the Chanukiah should go below, in that domain where apparently the Shekhinah, the divine presence, doesn't go down. So that's in an incredible direction, right? Something about the lighting and the whole mitzvah, the whole commandment of Chanukah is actually to light those lights. And the rabbis of the 16th century, this Shulchan Aruch is 16th century, more modern period, when the code of Jewish law is finally codified and said, okay, now we're going to come to some kind of format of so that we all kind of can talk to each other and relate to how we practice Judaism. And now we're going to say that ideally we should place the menorah and light those candles and put light exactly above 3 handbreadths, right? In that domain where the sages are saying the light of God or the presence of the divine presence doesn't go down. And the question is, why? Right? What is it about Hanukkah lights? What is it about this light of Hanukkah that has to be lit, especially in that place of apparent darkness? Why do we do it like that? And they say, well, and if you can't, for whatever reason, we can talk about the technical reasons. So all this week, we've been lighting above 10 handbreadths because we wanted to make sure that the lights were seen by in our apartment into the street. So we had to put, there's like the wall of the balcony, so it had to be on top of the wall. And today, finally, and Ariel, my husband, was like, one night of Hanukkah, we have to light under. So tonight we lit inside, and we did it, low below, and I'm actually, and that's why I'm here tonight. I'm in a different room. I'm exactly facing the menorah. Maybe I'll turn around and I'll show you the low menorah on the last night of Hanukkah, right? So why is it? What does that mean? That we put light, that illuminate that place, Dafka Hanukkah. Why is that? What is that teaching us? Why would we do that? Any ideas? Any thoughts on that? Yes.
Well, because I mean, here they're saying there is a movement. There's always this movement between the lower and the higher level. So even in the lower level, and especially in the lower level, you have to bring whatever is high, and you want to illuminate even the lower level, and then it will go up. But you have to go to
Right.
the most, the deepest part.
The deepest parts, exactly, right? So Hanukkah is an invitation for us to actually reach into those low parts, make contact with those low parts, and illuminate those low parts. So we are saying, yes, Linda, you're muted.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask whoever has the dog if they could mute themselves.
Yes,
It's
but I mean,
hard.
I let him in.
Oh, but if you could mute yourself unless you're speaking, then even if he barks, we won't hear it. So he'll be muted. Thank you. Sorry, I just couldn't, it was hard to concentrate.
Yeah. So let's see now what Rebbe Nachman does with that in the Dreidel. Right, so just kind of repeating what Elise was saying, right? There's an invitation, Dafka on Hanukkah, to bring light into that very, very low place, even the places where apparently God would not go. And again, assuming, right, that we are in this game, in this paradigm of the up and the down, that the down is unavoidable, that there is a realm of the low and that we have to enter into it, and that we have resistance to enter into it, right? And I think the rabbis are talking about that resistance, like, wait, God doesn't go there. There's no kedusha, there's no holiness in those low places. There's a limit to how far down I want to inquire, how far down I want to bring light to. And Hanukkah is saying, no, Dafka, precisely. That's what the light of Hanukkah is about, bringing light into that dark place. So now let's see how Rebbe Nachman relates to that with this thing of the Dreidel. So I have to tell you guys, I will send you this. I was so taken by Hanukkah and lighting that I didn't do it. I was preparing before we lit, kind of like over going over my sources, and I realized that I had missed a section of section 5 that I wanted to add. So you don't have it in your text. It's just, again, because I cannot bring you the whole text of, all right, so let me just backtrack for a second. The 5th source is Sichot Haran 40, and Sichot Haran 40, Sichot Haran, which means the conversations of Ha-Rav Nachman, right? Ran, Ha-Rav Nachman, it's an abbreviation of his name. Are teachings of Rebbe Nachman that we have seen before, that are not as lengthy and developed as Likutei Moharan, right? I don't know if you see it. This is, the Sefer of Likutei Moharan, super dense and super intense and difficult sometimes, or many times. But Sichot Haran, I have a very small version here, are smaller, kind of conversations that Rebbe Nachman would give. And there's one conversation in particular, which is number 40, that we were learning, throughout Hanukkah at home. And I couldn't bring you the whole thing because it's long, but it's talking about Rebbe Nachman's attitude towards philosophy. And Rebbe Nachman is very well known to be not very open to his Hasidim learning philosophical works. Rebbe Nachman was suspicious of philosophy in general, because even in this sikha, in this conversation, he talks about, they ask a lot of questions that just lead you to other questions, and they don't really, basically, they don't bring light, but bring more darkness and more confusion to the person. And, I don't want to say personally that I will never learn philosophy, and it's not so clear. Rebbe Nachman also played chess very famously with the enlightened people in Uman. He welcomed them and he played chess with them and engaged with them in conversation and in philosophy. But in general, as we have seen also, Rebbe Nachman was very much a proponent of simplicity and direct access to God and prayer. And therefore, he didn't want his Hasidim to engage with philosophy. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this particular Sikha conversation is because when we deal, part of the themes of Hanukkah is our relationship with Greece. And when we think Greece, we think philosophy for the most part. Like ancient Greece, we think the foundations of the philosophical that we're still within, right? Like that we're still influenced by and living by a lot of the values of Greek culture and Greek values. We talked a little bit about how the Greek Empire was not interested in taking over territory, but was interested in taking over the thinking of its people and wanting to enlighten its, the people that Greek culture went into contact and, bring in these kind of philosophical ideas. And part of the philosophical ideas, and again, I'm talking very much generalizations, but to kind of like understand a little bit of what is it about Hanukkah and Greek culture. Because when we read about what is Hanukkah, in the Gemara, in the Talmud, it says, well, the Greeks came and they came into the temple and they destroyed, they brought in statues, into the temple, and they debased the temple, and because they did that, then the Hashmonaim, the Maccabees came and started a war against the Greeks, and we eventually took over the temple, and we were able to find, a very small piece, jug of oil, and that jug of oil was enough to light the menorah, which is 6, the candelabra of 7 lights, and we were able to do that. Enough oil to light it one day, and it lasted for 8 days, and that's why we celebrate Hanukkah for 8 days, right? So the rabbis talk about this like victory, military victory over the Greeks, a little bit of, a small amount of small people that were able to defeat for many, many years the big Greek Empire. But it was also a victory over philosophy or over theology or over what do we hold as valuable in our tradition versus what Greek held valuable in their tradition. And that's the clash of cultures that takes place in Hanukkah. Torah versus Greek culture, Greek philosophy. So in this Sikha, Rebbe Nachman is relating to, be careful about engaging with Greek philosophy, engaging with philosophy in general. And at some point talks about the Dreidel as the model or the emblem of the way that Jews understand this relationship between the high and the low. So let's get into that. But I wanted to read with you first the little piece that I didn't bring, but I think it is important that I initiate with that, and then I'll send it to you if you want it. So in Sichot Haran, in 40, and now I added 12, and then you see 12 and 13. You don't have that, but then you have the 15. But I'm just reading a little bit, it's just a small paragraph. So I'm just going to read it for you. He goes like that. He says, all creation is like a rotating wheel, revolving and oscillating. So all creation is a rotating wheel that is revolving and oscillating, always in motion, always dynamic. At one time, something can be on the top, a head, with another on the bottom, a foot. Then the situation is reversed. Head becomes foot, and foot becomes head. A human changes to an angel, and an angel becomes a human. For the world is like a rotating wheel. It spins like a dreidel, with all things emanating from one root. So that's what you don't have. I'm going to pause here and just give you guys the ability to kind of respond, right? So Rebbe Nachman is saying the whole world is a wheel. What is on top goes to the bottom. What is on the bottom goes to the top. And why is that? And everything, what is the Lashon? What is the word? For the world is like a rotating wheel. It spins like a dreidel, with all things emanating from one root. So Rebbe Nachman is talking about this dynamic reality that is where things can change constantly. Going up or down is very kind of like vertical in that way, even though the dreidel, whatever. But it all emanates from one root. Okay? Let's go into the text a little further. This is why we play dreidel on Hanukkah. That's why we play dreidel on Hanukkah. Hanukkah is an aspect of the Holy Temple, and I'm going to explain that. The primary concept of the temple is the revolving wheel. The temple represented the superior below and the inferior above. Let's just pause there for a second. Right, so Rebbe Nachman is making a connection in his associative mind, but not that far out association by any means. That there's a connection between Hanukkah and the temple. What do you know of Hanukkah that connects Hanukkah with the temple? On a very simple level. Linda?
There's a menorah.
There's a menorah, exactly, right? The whole enactment of Hanukkah, the whole thing happens at the temple, right? The battling ground for Hanukkah is at the temple. Has to do with the Greeks coming into the temple and debasing the temple and not wanting to protect the temple. So it's very much, the scenery is related to the temple. What else do we know about the temple? When we are able to light the candle, the menorah, right? As you were saying, Linda, when we're able to light the menorah, we call it the Chanukah Habayit, right? Chanukah Habayit in Hebrew means the rededication of the Bayit, of the home. Bayit, as in the Beit HaMikdash, right? We rededicate, we're able to enter again into a relationship with our home. The temple in Hebrew is called Beit HaMikdash, the holy house. In the same way that in Hebrew, many things are called by Beit. For example, a school is Beit Sefer, the house of the book. Or, a hospital is called a Beit Cholim, a house for the people that are sick, right? So in Hebrew, that's more modern Hebrew, right? But it comes from that sense of like, the Beit HaMikdash is called the house of the holy. Okay, so Hanukkah is very much related to the house. When the rabbis say, what is Hanukkah? They say, Ner ish ubeito, a light, a person, and their household. We light at home. It's a very home-based holiday. Right, where we stay at home, we connect at home. It's very much about what is our home, what is our home base. Hanukkah is very much related to our home, literally, meaning the four walls of this house, and And that's why we'll have to light by the doorpost, and we enter, we go out, right? That whole interplay of Hanukkah happens like that, and also happens with the Beit HaMikdash, which is the ultimate home of the Jewish people, is in Jerusalem, in the Beit HaMikdash. So going back to the text, and I'm just going to read a little bit, not a lot more here. So Hanukkah is an aspect of the Holy Temple. And the primary concept of the temple is the revolving wheel. The temple represented the superior below and the inferior above. What does that mean? The superior below and the inferior above. God lowered his presence into the temple. There was an ability of God coming from above down to the temple. And this is called the superior below, right? That which is on high came down below. And the form of the temple was engraved on high, corresponding to the inferior above. Therefore, the temple is like a dreidel, a rotating wheel where everything revolves and is transformed. The function of the temple is to bring down what is above below, and what is below above. Is to connect in those two directions, this verticality of connection between what we were talking about before, the divine and the mundane. Elaine.
Yeah, well, there's obviously so much in here, and I don't know Rebbe Nachman other than what I've learned in this class. So I'm sure that there are huge amounts of context that I'm just not familiar with. This feels quite confusing. We just said that God doesn't descend below the 3 handbreadths. And so I was thinking of, incidents in the Torah, like the angel coming to Sarah to tell her she was going to have a baby when she laughs. And that sort of, or the visitors to Abraham, that he runs to make them the best. And then I'm thinking, that's not God, it's an angel. So that's sort of consistent. And then there's the example you give in the text that God does descend to the top of Sinai to speak to Moshe, but that's actually very high up. But now you're saying that God is descending all the way into the temple.
Beautiful.
And the temple is rising to the height of God. So
it's kind of contradicting that idea, right? Like somehow
it feels, on a simplistic level, it feels
absolutely
completely contradictory.
Absolutely.
I'm sure it isn't, and I don't know what you can.
I think that's exactly the point, right? That in a certain way, what the rabbis are expressing with this idea that God does not descend below a certain threshold, they're describing our experience of very much dichotomizing our reality and say God belongs above and we belong down here. And we all operate in that level to a large extent, okay, yeah, spirituality, yeah, okay, good. But how do I put bread on the table, right? And how do I, right? Or how could it be that God could sustain or could accept, or how could it be that there is injustice in the world? Isn't there God? Right? All those questions and all those which are not wrong, and the rabbis are saying, we actually, they exist, are saying there's a threshold, there's a distinction between the two. And the rabbis in that Gemara do not come to a, if we were to continue reading the Gemara, we would see that the rabbi said, but what do you mean? But God comes down, but what do you mean? But no, but they don't, but yes, but no. So they go back and forth into that discussion that it seems not to be resolved. Does God come down, or does God doesn't come down? It's not resolved. But now we come to Hanukkah in a fight against this vision that is saying there's a dichotomy between holiness and non-holiness, and there are two different categories. You know, my husband was like he said, this whole world of philosophy is a world of categories, right? It's a world of saying this belongs here and this belongs there and this belongs here. And those categories, let's not mix between them. Then a little bit of science is also making categories and is also kind of like making definitions of things and saying this is this and not that. And we need categories in life. And that's why we need Greek culture. And the whole relationship between Greek culture and Torah is very fascinating. We're not going to get into that for another time. But in a certain way, we have absorbed, you know, it says in the Torah that there were three sons of Noach, Ham, Yefet, and Shem. Ham is the Canaanites. Yefet is the predecessor of Greece, Yefet, which means beauty, and Shem, which is the Semites, right? Which is the predecessors of the Jewish people. And it says in the Torah that the Yefet will dwell in the tents of Shem. That the Greek philosophy, the Greek beauty of these categories, of this ability to develop scientific understanding of the world, will live within the tents of Shem, meaning that there needs to be some kind of an integration between the two. We're not going to separate them. However, in the world of science and philosophy and categorization, we create separations between things. And Rabbi Nachman is saying that Judaism ultimately doesn't want to establish those separations, but wants to integrate the two. So that this image of the dreidel, of that thing that can spin things, and because why? Because they all come from one root. This idea of oneness, which is the ultimate idea of Judaism, right? Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The fact that at the end, the root of all existence is all one. That we don't separate between good and evil, because ultimately all comes from God and all comes from one. In the Zohar, it says that evil doesn't have an existence of its own. Evil also comes from good. Evil, that nothing can exist outside of the oneness of God. There's nothing out of oneness, right? We don't separate like Christianity does. There's the evil, there's the devil, and then there's God. And all the bad comes from the devil. There's no such a thing in Judaism. There is evil in Judaism for sure, but it's all at the end, ultimately, all a sense of oneness. And Rabbi Nachman in this story is saying, Hanukkah is the teaching of this oneness. And that's why we play the dreidel, because the Beit HaMikdash, our holy temple, our holy house, teaches us that we are able to bring the up, down, all the way down, all the way down, all the way down, and we can lift from the all the way down to all the way up. That they're not fixed realities that are fixed and unchangeable, that there is a mystery, that there is a Nes Hanukkah. What is Nes? Miracle, that we transcend nature. And that is against philosophy or against science, right? But the teaching of the dreidel is that there is a dynamic relationship between the top and the bottom, and that what is on top today can be in the bottom tomorrow. And that there's a unity in between the two. And the Beit HaMikdash is that mechanism that brings the infinitude of God into this world, which is impossible to think of philosophically. It contradicts logic. How could infinite come down into a finite presence? How could that be? It's impossible. And yet, that's what the Beit HaMikdash does, brings down the most infinite into the most finite, and from the most finite to the most infinite. That's the teaching of Rabbi Nachman about the Dreidel. And why is that itchadshut? Why is that? How is that related to not being old? Because Hanukkah teaches us exactly that lesson, that we can somehow, right, somehow disrupt and transcend those categories that close us and say, yes, reality is this. Reality is defined in this way. And comes Hanukkah and comes Judaism in general, and each holiday in a different way, and says, it's true. We need to incorporate, we need to be, connected to reality. We need to be connected to science, and we need to be somehow connected to philosophy. And yet we can renew the reality. We can make it different. We have the capacity to bring light even to the bottom, and from the bottom recreate the reality and make it different. It's what Rabbi Sachs often talks about, how Judaism brings more than anything else a sense of optimism to the world. And we need it so badly these days, right? Because there's big problems around the corner. Big problems politically, big problems in extremism, big problems with the environment, right? So we need to deal with the problems. We need to relate to them. We need to respond to them. We need to act. We need to respond. We cannot just say, no, God is, no. Reality is reality. And we are going to bring down into the most granular reality, but not being limited by it. And I think that's what Rebbe Nachman is talking when he's talking about the dreidel, that it spins, and we can spin. Any questions, any thoughts? And, of this, it's just, for me, I feel like it's just so necessary. Yes.
Oh, this is a very new way for me to look at Hanukkah. It's not a Yom Tov. We don't have any, well, it's not that there's no halacha, but I mean, we drive, we watch TV, even,
Right.
The religious, the observant people. And yet this would suggest that Hanukkah in some ways is deeply important. I don't know if this is the one time. I'm thinking that on Yom Kippur, when at the end during Ne'ilah, and we're chanting, the gates are closing, the gates are closing, and the gates have been open through the day, I think permitting us to rise up. For me, that's the implication. The gates are open, soon the gates will be closed. I don't know how these things relate together. I always think of Hanukkah as being relatively unimportant in the Jewish year.
Right.
And not that it's not nice, but I guess compared to Christmas, it's not a big deal. But it's one of the nice holidays, Purim, fun holiday. But it's not a Yom Tov. It's not a serious thing. But this would make it extremely
let me
serious.
just say this, Elaine. The Chachamim, in the Gemara and the Talmud say that in the days of the Messiah, right, when finally we get to this we complete this cycle of fall and reclaiming, right, the stature of Adam. And again, Adam is mankind, right? It's not just the Jews.
Ben Adam.
Ben Adam, yeah. So the rabbis say all the holidays and all the mitzvot will be nullified. There will be no Yom Kippur, there will be no Pesach, there will be nothing but Chanukah and Purim.
Really?
Yes. Why?
Why?
Because both on Chanukah and Purim are days
Of joy.
Days of gratitude, especially Chanukah. And the midah, the quality of gratitude, which in Hebrew We were just learning about that before we started. Hoda'ah in Hebrew.
Hoda'ah, yeah.
Hoda'ah is both gratitude and recognition in Hebrew, right? To be grateful means to recognize, to lehakir, to know.
And yodat, is that word from the same
No.
root?
No, yeda is a different word. Yeda is more consciousness. Yeah, hoda'ah, lehodia, which
Thanks.
actually is the word Yehudi comes from there. Yehuda, hoda'ah is to recognize something, to acknowledge something. That's what a Jew is. A Jew is somebody who has the ability to recognize the other, and in this case, God. That's what Hoda'ah is, and that's why all the festivals will be mitbatel, except for Hanukkah and Purim, which are the only two holidays that don't appear in the Torah. They're just not right. They're not in the Torah. They're like from the sages. The sages established them because there were miracles that happened to them, that happened during those days. And as you said, they're cute and they're sweet, but they're not.
And they're fun and they're optimistic.
They're fun, right? But they're the hidden gems that will maintain themselves valid when everything goes through. It's a very deep teaching, right? And why? It's not even a holiday, as you say, it's not a Yom Tov. It's not like we drive, there's no, it's not difficult, it's sweet, we give presents, we light candles. Who doesn't like Hanukkah, right? It's so easy. And that's another teaching of Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman says, spiritual growth is not through epiphanies of difficult, and it's in the simplicity. In the simplicity of being able to recognize that there can be light even in the darkest places. That's all. That's what you're recognizing. That God reaches to the very bottom of existence. That there's nothing devoid of God. In a certain way, kind of answering the question of the Chachamim, saying, wait, does God come down? And Rabbi Nachman, and not only Rabbi Nachman, but even the Chachamim recognize that yes. And that's
so
what
what's with those 3 hand breaths? The not coming below it. What's that about?
One of the things about Chazal, the rabbis, spirit of the rabbis, rabbinical Judaism, is that the rabbis are extremely, in my opinion, and not only my opinion, but it's one of the things that I love, that they're honest. They're asking the hard questions, because do we really believe that God is with me in my most ugly places or not? And they're saying, well, we really don't like to think that God goes down those places. We like to separate. We like to see God is very nice up here. And I can relate to God when I'm feeling connected. But what can I relate to God when I'm feeling really disconnected? Can I really relate to God in those places where I feel ashamed of myself? Right? When I'm feeling happy with who I am. When I've done something that I felt was really off. Is God there? Right? The rabbis are asking that question. And I think the rabbis answer, maybe I didn't bring where the rabbis answer, but I think the rabbis give us a hint of an answer to that question when they say, but wait, but doesn't God descend to this? But wait, doesn't Elijah go up to this? Don't we see that in our tradition? And if we were to learn the holidays together, right, we would see that this message of transcending the categories of differentiation and separation is a constant theme in Judaism. Constantly. Is yes and. Yes to reality, yes to categories, and very much so in Judaism. You have to light in this place at this time, and when the people are leaving the shuk, and not before.
And this is
Like
tahor
book.
and this is
And this,
tameh.
exactly, right? So we have categories. We don't, that's why we don't say Greek culture is completely off. No. We incorporate it. And yet we still can disrupt it. That's the teaching of Hanukkah, that we're not limited by categorization. By the way, and I'll end with that, in Jewish tradition, or like the rabbis, have this like understanding of merit, and like that there's the scales, right? The scales of whoever does good, and that there's always a sense of being in a situation of judgment. There's a lot of judgment, right, in Judaism. Are you doing the things right? Are you doing things wrong, right? And there's often a discussion of like the what is it, the angels that come to God to kind of say, wait, the Jewish people are doing bad things, you should punish them. And then there's the angels that come and say, no, they're actually really good. And, if you were in that situation, you would also fall, and yada, 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 right? So the defendants, right, the forces of defending, the forces of mercy, the forces of chesed and kindness are called sanegor, which is a Greek term that I'm not sure that I know what it means. But the forces of judgment are called katego, which is category. It's the same root. And it's also a Greek word. The words of judgment are the words of categorization that say, you did this, you deserve this. And those are, the world is functions very much so with those forces of judgment, because judgment is important. We need laws, and we need accountability, and we need trials, and we need to make sure that things are in their place. Those are necessary. There's a Torah in the Likutei Moharan that I'm doubting whether or not I'm going to bring, that talks about that, with the relationship between the two, which is one of the first Torahs that I ever learned and I ever taught in Likutei Moharan. That is incredible, and we might, well, I have to see, because we're running out of time and sessions to bring everything. But again, this idea of katego, which is the force of judgment, we're saying, yes, it has to be there, but it's not the whole picture. It's not the root is one. You understand? And Judaism is saying it's all one. At the end, everything is fixed. At the end, it's all good. At the end, it's all good. Because it comes from the root of one. It comes from the root of God, and God is good. By definition, in an axiomatic type of way in Yiddishkeit, in Judaism. Yeah. Just think of the Dreidel, right? Like, we're not defined. We're not defined. Predefined. We can change our reality. It might take a lot of effort, it might take a lot of time, it might take a lot of frustration, and it does. It does, and it's dark and messy and yucky and all the kinds of things, and that's life, It's not always pretty. And yet, it's like, to see, I really encourage you to stay with the candles tonight. To really, really like bring light into all the darkness. And there's so much, unfortunately. Yeah. And Rebbe Nachman and the Tzaddikim and Chassidut comes to tell us, yes, and there's more. Right? And that's when Rebbe Nachman is saying, the world is a dreidel. Don't be fooled. Don't think that things are static, that things are predetermined, that things are predefined. things are always moving, right? And we go from darga to darga, and we have to go down in order to get up, and we have to accept that as part of our life here. Okay, what do you guys take with you guys for today's session?
Thank you, everybody. I asked a lot of questions and I hope I didn't take too much of your, energy in the wrong direction, but
No, you didn't.
I think
What
that's
do you
all
think,
fascinating. It's all
Elise?
new to me.
Elaine, if you were to say one thing that you take from today, what do you take?
Well, if I say I'm going to really look at the candles tonight and see what happens.
Awesome. What about you guys?
I'm kind of speechless. I don't know what to say because it's really so deep and so profound, and I feel like my brain can't quite get around it. And also I have to go. So this was quite an amazing teaching, amazing session, but I wish I had been able up here to.
Right. Yeah, it's okay. It's yeah, I can relate to those experiences.
As I said before, I really enjoy your class. Thank you very much. And Chag
What do-
Sameach.
Chag Sameach, Chag Sameach.
Chag
Brenda,
Sameach, everybody.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
It's
there
a
anything-
wonderful class, Sabrina. I'm really enjoying it. I hope you're going to teach some more.
Thank you.
Oh yes, I
Chag-
certainly would like to take another class with you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
bye-bye.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Bye.
Bye,
Happy
sweetie.
Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
Love you, Sabina.
Love
Happy
you too.
Hanukkah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye, Brenda. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Very
I'm closing.
informative. Yeah, this is really good.
You're welcome. Mwah. Bye, sweetie.
Fun. Bye.
Bye.
Manea.
Yeah.
Yeah.